Hale.
And I'm Alex, and today we're going to do the sports book tag.
So this was a tag created by Ataleoftwosydneys, and I don't think she tagged anyone, but we're doing it because it looked fun.
Yep.
And we are going to tag Jay's Book Castle, and we're going to link her channel down in the description below. So check her out, and I really hope she does this tag because I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep, I agree.
Yes. So I have the questions, so I'm going to read them out, and hopefully you guys get some new book ideas. Well, first of all, these questions are based on sports, just to preface. The first question is about basketball. So for this book, it's supposed to be what is the best dual/multiple point of view book in your opinion. So for this one, I had to pick Scythe by Neil Shusterman because I thought that it was really fascinating going from Citra and Rowan. So it goes back and forth between Citra and Rowan, and they're kind of like competing, but they're also like kind of friends. So it adds some nice vibe to it, and it's really interesting to watch it go back and forth between how they're feeling, especially after they get separated and have to really compete against each other.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was really well done, and that Citra and Rowan each have their own voice, which sometimes with dual perspectives you don't get, especially because like I'm not a huge fan of dual perspectives, but like most of the books I read have dual perspectives, so like you kind of deal with it. But this one I actually enjoyed, so like that was really nice. It was a nice change to the one I'm used to.
Yeah. So my book for this I don't own because it's actually one that I read as an audiobook. It's The Serpent King by Jeff Zentner. So this one has 3 perspectives, so you see Dill, Lydia, and Travis. And it's basically just their story of how they grow up and they deal with what's happened to Dill and how they're going to get out of their small little town in Tennessee. And because I read it as an audiobook, they actually had 3 different narrators, so you actually got a different feel each chapter. And I just loved all of their perspectives, and getting all of the characters were totally different from each other. So you got a different voice in every chapter, especially with Lydia because she was the only girl in the friend group. So you definitely got that different feel and how it all worked out in this small little town. And I just loved that book.
So the next question is based on the sport of soccer, which I played for many, many years.
I did soccer camp for like 4 years.
You know, it counts. And this question asks, what book kept your adrenaline pumping? So for this one, I picked The Martian by Andy Weir. And if you've read the book or seen the movie, then you know that like you really don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, obviously, like you can kind of guess that like everything's gonna be okay, but like you really don't know. You don't know. Things go wrong like all the time in this, and you're like really rooting for him and stuff. But like when he goes on that trek, like, boy, your adrenaline is really pumping because like he's so close to death. Like he could die if he screws up at any moment, and it just like really keeps you going. Like you're like, oh my god, what's gonna happen next? So I definitely recommend it. It's a brilliant sci-fi, but there is a lot of science in it. So if you're not a science person, maybe just watch the movie.
So I picked for this one 3 Truths and a Lie by Brent Hardinger. This book is twisted. This is another thriller that I read that I can't say I loved it because I didn't even understand what it had. It's so twisted I can't even explain it. I honestly just recommend reading it because I want you to understand how twisted this book is. So I went into it and I was like, okay, like there's actually all these kids and all, and like I kept reading and I got to the end and I was like, what the? So my adrenaline was just pumping through the whole thing because it's a thriller, so it's kind of like they're in a cabin in the woods and it seems like someone is after them, and then you keep reading and you get to the end and you're like, oh? I sat there for like half an hour after and I finished it like 1 a.m. a couple years ago, and I was like, I don't even know what to do right now because I just don't understand how twisted this book is.
There was a lot of confusion.
It was. I was very confused about this book. It was bad.
So then the next question is about softball, and this asks, what books seem surface level but hit hard when you actually read this? Mine was kind of a stretch, but like I honestly feel like I haven't really read many books that I went into and I was like, oh, I don't know how deep it's gonna be.
I know.
Like I usually go into it, I'm like, this book is gonna be really freaking deep. But this one I read was The Sacred Lies of Minnow Bly by Stephanie Oakes. It's about a cult. So like, yeah, it's deep from the get-go, but basically it's about this girl, Minnow, and she gets out of the cult, but like, not in a good way. I mean, like, this chick does not have hands. They got chopped off, so like, she ain't doing so hot. And the authorities are trying to figure out what happened and like the cult's existence and stuff. Like, they want to know what happened to Minnow. And so while like you first hear the word cult and stuff, and you're like, okay, this is gonna be like a dark read and stuff, it's really heavy because of what happens in the cult. Like you find out like Minnow's story and stuff, and you read more about it, and it's like really, really dark. It's really dark, it's really heavy. You definitely shouldn't read this if you're in the mood for a light fluffy read, because you have to really think with this one, and like it makes you kind of sad. So that's why I picked it for this one. Definitely very deep, and it's more than just a cult book.
So what I picked for this one is I'm the Messenger by Marcus Zusak. So this is about Ed Kennedy, and basically he starts getting these messages in the mail, and they're actually cards, and then they have like addresses and times written on them, and he has to like go and figure out what's happening and how to solve it. So I went into this honestly I liked Marcus Zusak because I had read The Book Thief like literally a month before I was in 7th grade, and I went into it and I was like, oh, I just like Marcus Zusak. So going into this book, I guess I didn't really know how deep it was, but it kind of seemed like it would be at the back. And getting to the end, it has a message that stuck with me since 7th grade until now, and now I'm a senior in high school. So I love this book, and I guess because I was kind of a naive little 7th grader, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and from there I found a favorite book of mine. So I recommend this book, except I have some friends who don't like it, so.
True. The next question on this tag is about volleyball, and it says, if things go your way, it's by sheer luck. What book is it? So for this one, I don't have it because I read it at school, and I picked The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and unfortunately I really can't say a lot because when I picked this book, what I had in mind was specifically the ending. So like,
yeah.
If you know, you know. But I can't really say much about it, otherwise I will spoil the whole book. Yeah. But basically, like, all this crazy stuff happens, and this futuristic, but like it's really not that futuristic, and it's this dystopian theocracy, and it just ends. And you don't know what happened. And honestly, she could be dead, she could be fine, I don't know, I will never know. Maybe the TV show will come out with a 2nd season and you'll find out, but like, I don't know.
Oh, man.
At this point, I have no idea whatever happened to that main character, so that's why I had to pick this book, because you just don't know.
So for this one, I actually picked Scythe by Neil Shusterman. So this one was actually a candidate for soccer as well, but I remember the end of this book, I literally stopped because I was reading it before dinner, and then we had dinner, and I had like 20 pages left. And I remember my heart pounding all the way throughout dinner because I was so anxious to read the end of the book because I didn't know how it was going to end. I didn't know who was going to come. I know.
So tame compared to Thunderhead.
I know. I've heard that Thunderhead is way worse, and I'm so getting to that book like it's pretty much next to my list. But I just remember being so anxious about Scythe that I didn't know how it was going to turn out, and it seemed like everything in the middle even was kind of sheer luck of how things turned out.
Yep. You're not wrong. So the next question is about hockey, which my boyfriend plays that. And so the question asks, what book had enough tension to feel like you were running on thin ice? For this, I got to pick one of my favorite books.
Oh my god.
Richard Preston's The Demon in the Freezer. It's a non-fiction novel about biowarfare, basically. So it starts off, and it's about this person who died from anthrax because they received it in the mail. And now the U.S. USAMRIID, which deals with biowarfare and threats like that, they have to figure out what's going on and whether this is like a terrorist attack. So that's how the book starts, but it goes into other things as well. Like you learn about smallpox and how they eradicated it. And then you finally go back to the anthrax eventually, and you're like, oh my god. But like, I mean, obviously when you're talking about biowarfare and stuff, like it's intense because you die. Like that's all that happens. Like anthrax kills you. There's not much you can do about it. And throughout this whole book, like I felt so many nerves because I didn't know what was gonna happen. I mean, I was like, this was written in the past and the country's still around, so obviously everything must end okay. But like, I didn't know exactly how it was gonna happen, and I didn't know who was gonna die, exactly what it meant, and it was so fascinating. I read it basically in a day, and this is a nonfiction book, but I really, really loved this book, and it was super intense. It's kind of told like a fiction story where it's really entertaining, and it's like a story rather than just like throwing facts at you. And I think that's what made it so intense and so good.
So for this one, I picked They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera, and I literally felt like Rufus and Mateo, who are the main characters, were literally skating on thin ice throughout the entire day because they know they're gonna die that day. So when little things happen, like at one point there was like a car crash that killed someone, like that could have been them, and it was just like anything could have happened to them, then it doesn't make sense that it didn't happen to them. So it was totally, they basically just skate on thin ice throughout the whole day, and you're just along for the ride. You're like, great, I know they're gonna die, but like, I don't want them to.
You're like, dang it.
Yeah. So thanks, Adam Silvera. Really appreciate you.
The last question is about football, and it asks, what book attacked you from all angles? For this one, I had to pick Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. Like, I still am shook from the ending of this. I can't even believe it. I cried after it ended. I was so angry when it ended. I was so happy in the beginning of the book, and I felt so attacked the whole book. Like, the last 100 pages, I was like, Neil is out for me, and every person in this fandom, and it just hurts. Like, this book hurts. The ending of this book is painful, and like, you have to wait months to read the last one, so it's just, if you want to be like murdered, but murdered in a good way because it's so good, then like, you should read this duology currently, but it's about to become a trilogy soon.
There you go.
So, yeah.
So for this one, I picked The Raven King by Maggie Stepfevader. So this is the last book of the Raven cycle, so I'm going to try not to say too much about this book. But basically, it's about Blue and all the boys, and basically Blue has a prophecy from her family because they're all like psychics and whatever. And basically, whoever she kisses, when she kisses her true love, he will die. So basically, you go all the way through the series and holding on to that, and Gainsey is trying to figure out how he survived. And from the beginning of the book, so this isn't a spoiler, it's literally in like the first 2 pages, you find out that Gainsey is supposed to die. And you're like, excuse me? So I felt like just going into this book, you knew you were going to be attacked, and I felt highly attacked, and I ugly sobbed. So it was worth it. That's all that matters.
Yeah, the feels got to you in that one.
Literally, it was really painful, but I loved it.
No, I understand. I felt that way too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, that was this tag. Again, check down below to see if you were tagged, Jay. And a lot of fun to do it. We'll link Sydney's channel in the original video as well in the description, so go check that out as well. But for now, that's it. Bye!